It's another business day. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to 55 minutes of current and relevant business talks. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Let's do business, starting from what's going on in the global space with oil specifically, where prices extended gains as a smaller than expected November output hike by OPEC Plus helped to ease some of the fears of a growing supply glut. So we look at the numbers, and it's not as drastic as it looked this time yesterday. We see Brent is at $65.63 after it gained 0.08%, while WTI gained 0.05%, bringing that price to $61.84 a barrel. Both the contracts settled more than 1% higher in the previous session after the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, plus Russia and some smaller producers known as OPEC Plus, decided to increase its collective oil production by 137,000 barrels per day in the month of November. The move was in contrast to market expectations for a more aggressive reintroduction of supply, a sign that the group remains cautious about increasing its production share in the global oil market amid predictions of a supply surplus in the fourth quarter as well as next year. And away from the price of oil, Sub-Saharan Africa economies are expected to grow by a faster 3.8% this year on the back of stable prices that have spurred easing by policymakers. This is according to the World Bank. And the momentum, they say, will increase in the next 2 years. The upgrade from 3.5 in April was driven by stabilizing foreign exchange and inflation rates in countries like Ethiopia, giving room for interest rate cuts. The bank said this in its biannual Africa Pulse report. Growth will accelerate to an annual average of 4.4% in the next 2 years, slightly up from an initial forecast of 4.3%. Growth prospects for 30 economies out of the 47 that make up the region, as defined by the bank, were revised upwards, according to the report. And then here in Nigeria, the Debt Management Office has opened the October 2025 federal government savings bond offer with interest rates of 14.06% and 15.06% for the 2-3-year tenures. The offer runs from October 6 to 10 with settlement on October 15. Rates declined from 15.54 and 16.54% in September following the central bank's cuts in policy rates to 27%. Each bond unit is priced at 1,000 naira with a minimum interest of 5,000 naira. The DMO says that the bond remains a safe, steady option for Nigerians seeking regular income. And still around the market, we saw a huge gain on the stock market at the close of Monday's trade. We saw that the all share index has jumped up from 143,000 level to 144,000 level after the all share gained 0.86%. That's almost 780 billion naira was added to the market cap. Activity was all in the green, and top gainers, Mansard and Seplat, coming from the oil and gas. Those were the major drivers. Top trades had LLX, Charms, as well as a Sterling Bank. They led the economy. Outside the markets now, significant progress has been made in the economy through the unification of the nation's foreign exchange, revenue collection, and reduced debt to GDP ratio. That's coming from the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, at the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit that's going on in Abuja. He says that trade, agriculture, infrastructure, and logistics remain at the core of President Bola Tinubu's administration to ensure inclusion for all. Our correspondent, Sarah Chimugu, was there at the event and sent in this report.
And I'll just draw it's the 31st summit of the Nigeria Economic Summits Group, and it's bringing together government officials, development partners, captains of industries, and members of the private sector. Themed the reform imperative, building a prosperous and inclusive Nigeria by 2030. The summit comes at a critical juncture in Nigeria's development journey, with bold reforms already shaping the nation's trajectory.
Private investment, foreign direct investments want to come to places where they know that the institutional framework will support any issues that they have. We can't continue to be in an environment where for any simple court case, it takes 10 years to solve.
One of the objectives of the annual meeting is to forge a consensus for the nation's reform, which targets balancing stability and inclusive growth. It will also provide an opportunity for meaningful dialogue and collaboration to accelerate Nigeria's transformation and secure a prosperous and inclusive future for all.
To build economic resilience, this administration is prioritizing job creation that drive productivity through improvement and support of different sectors: digital skills, creative economy skills, development of the blue and maritime sector, human capital development, as well as agriculture, livestock and fisheries.
The meeting then goes into a plenary session.
It's a difficult enough.
Speakers bear their minds on how the government can get it right through exports.
When the Japanese government raised the flag on Nigerian exports of sesame, Nigeria exports are up to 40% of consumption of sesame in Japan. We approached them proactively and came up with a plan working with ITC to support us technically.
The Vice President Kashim Shettima declared the meeting open.
It was 13.5%.
In his speech, he lists government's intervention leveraging on its renewed hope agenda, which he hopes is yielding results, but appeals for patience for its rewards.
I admit that this growth has not yet fully translated into enough jobs for our people, but we are closing that gap. We are giving priority to agriculture and solid minerals, two sectors with great potential to create jobs and strengthen our economy.
For the next 3 days, there will be intense deliberations across all sectors of the economy, with recommendations made to address the concerns raised. Hopefully, this will translate to the nation's socio-economic development. Sarah Chimugu, Channels Television News.
Let's follow up on that conversation at the 31st Summit of NESG, and we're doing that with the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Dr. Tayo Adeloju. Dr. Adeloju, good morning. Well, thank you for taking time out. I know you have sessions even today, taking time out to be with us on the program. You're welcome back. It's still Business Morning. We're here on Channels Television, and we intend to speak with Dr. Tayo Adeloju, the Chief Executive Officer of the NESG, on the ongoing summit. Dr. Adeloju, good morning and welcome to the program.
And thank you for having us.
Great. So we saw the Vice President at your meeting at your summit yesterday. I think for me, one major thing that he said there, apart from all of the promises and the focus and all, is that he's going to take the results and the opinions and suggestions from the summit to the president. Because a lot of people would say, yes, this is your 31st summit, you've been having all of that. Where are the impacts? Where do we see the results of all the brilliant conversations? And I did listen to some of your sessions yesterday, especially the one with the Minister of Digital Economy. Very brilliant session you had there. But where does it take us to? How does it change anything in the economy?
So yes, we had a really fantastic start yesterday. And as you noted, there were many things in the Vice President's address that he delivered on behalf of His Excellency President Tinubu. I think the most important charge to the private sector was the need to truly get in and on the big agendas, especially the agendas that linked specifically to our capacity to translate quickly recommendations into action. And I think there was a broad commitment from Mr. Vice President to act on recommendations as quickly as they got them. And so we take that very seriously to ensure that the sessions from the summit have the forward guidance necessary in the shortest possible time to, in the next 1-2 weeks, that they're at the key desks of the policymakers that need to act on them for the Federal Executive Council to review. He also challenged us on, I think, in his statement, about Alhaji Dangote being an institution, pointed to a bigger question of how we treat our investors. It's going to be Nigerian transnational conglomerates and businesses that will compete across Africa in the ACFTA and across the economy. And so one of the challenges for the Vice President is for business leaders to come together and think about a formidable industry, labor, market performance framework. So as we liberalize markets and make them more competitive, we have a framework and a governance architecture for how these markets, manage losers, winners, in building the Nigeria of our dreams. As you know, every time you liberalize a market, you also create some disruption. With those disruptions, there are inevitable losers and winners. And a regulatory governance framework has to allow these markets to transition in a responsible way while protecting key investments. I think that's why Mr. Vice President gave that the needed push. And I think that we're in full support of that position of Mr. Vice President in moving things forward. And so I think we are committed as the NESG, and I think the business leaders are geared in, locked in. They're deeply embedded in the sessions with very serious conversations going on across board. The Minister of Trade threw a challenge to us on industrialization. Yesterday, we take that very seriously. So we'll be back with our notes on that. The Minister of Digital, like we pointed out, threw some strong challenges on digital transformation. Again, I think there will be a strong, robust response on the private sector. So I think one of the things you will see in this year's summit report, which will come out in very quick succession, will be a really solid action framework with responsibilities and accountabilities for both government and captains of industry to implement side by side, and to do so with really short 30, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 1 year timelines, which allows Nigerians to see that the summit this year takes the platform to another level, ready to be calibrated for broad-based, serious action over the next few days and months. And I think that's where we push everyone, on the seriousness, on converging on what matters the most, whilst resolving the challenges of Nigeria's economic transformation. Last thing to just point out is that one of the big lessons from yesterday as a whole, the summary of yesterday, is Nigeria's economic transformation is built and will be built on several pillars. The pillar of ensuring that our resources, our assets are optimized for industrialization has to happen, and we must commit to that together. The days of supporting assets that don't perform are gone. You can't invest over $100 billion in a refinery over decades. It doesn't work, and people say, oh, you mustn't sell it, you mustn't transform it, you mustn't reform it. Those days are gone, right? But at the same time, you must have labor that is well settled in stable, fair, transparent jobs and contracts that allow them to contribute, because labor is a key factor of production, right? And labor should be pro-productivity, pro-results, pro-growth, pro-markets. And then we must transform capital. A big part of yesterday was thinking about how do you finance all of this? Nigeria is a $3 trillion opportunity that must be financed. How do you do that? Just by the way, back to labor, we released a jobs and productivity report yesterday, where Nigeria must create 27 million jobs every year. Chidozie, I've been thrown offline, I think.
On, Dr. Adeloju, you're on. We can hear you and see you.
I think something seemed to have thrown me off. Sorry.
No, you're on. You're still on.
Sorry, these things. My screen just went off. Sorry about that.
We can still see you and hear you. Please go ahead.
So 27 million jobs.
Sorry, Dr. Adeloju, if you could start. Sorry, just so you sound whole. You were talking about the jobs report. Let's start from the top there.
Sorry. Yes. So I said the jobs and productivity report we released yesterday shows that Nigeria must create 27 million new jobs by 2030. That's about 5 million jobs a year. Now, for that to happen, right, we must attract the capital that creates the opportunities, that creates the jobs, right? And to do that, we must become more investment friendly. And we must make sure that we are targeting the jobs that allows us to put more Nigerians to work, but to put more Nigerians into productive work, and not create more working poor jobs. You know, a large segment of Nigerians are working. It's not like they don't have work. It's that the work keeps them in poverty, keeps them below the poverty line. And that has to be changed. So one of the push yesterday on labor matters is we must create more decent, fair, transparent, productive, profitable work that lifts more people out of poverty. And to do that, we must open up the sectors that can attract investment. And I think we pointed in our report to the sectors with high impact, high investment opportunities that those investments can go in. So labor intensive, high job elasticity sectors. So one of the outcomes of the summit will now be this rapid consensus on what the jobs agenda for Nigeria will be. Now, the other part of the human condition that came out at the summit was the target by the Honorable Minister for Budget and Economic Planning to eliminate poverty by 2030. Multidimensional poverty in Nigeria, which stood at 133 million people in 2022, to take that number down from 51%, to sub 30%. Will require all hands on deck. And, social protection and social investment is an important part of that, those that have already fallen through the cracks. But if you do not create jobs that lift more people out of poverty permanently, into economic empowerment, social protection will not be enough.
Yeah, so Dr. Adeloju, you talked about the need to create jobs. And of course, that is directly tied to the need for stable government policy, a friendly investment environment, and you have the ear, and I believe you still have the ear of the executive represented by the vice president. We know if you talk to a lot of people, intending investors already, even for instance, I just spoke to a couple of investors at the coastal, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road, and they shared, their grievances where they had invested, and then suddenly all of this is happening, and they don't seem to be satisfied with what the government is offering them. So issues like this obviously are direct threats to this dream of creating, you did say 5 million jobs a year, because if you can't attract the investors or keep the investors, then it's a big problem.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we at the NESG have insisted must come out of this summit is clear economic forward guidance, right? When you want an investor to invest in your country, he must be able to think about 3, 5, 7, 10 years. If I put in $100 million, what would it translate into? Will I have a stable policy environment? Will I have a stable regulatory environment? Will I have a stable market environment? Will I have, my investments protected and supported? Will I have investor aftercare, right? When I onboard this investment and I plan for a tax regime that is X rate at Y, will that be stable? When I want to repatriate my profits to my country, when I'm, after I've made a profit, will there be the liquidity in terms of FX repatriation? These are all the questions that an investor, and of course, will my investments be secure? Will I be able to go to court in that country and adjudicate for my rights as a business and be given fair and just hearing and decisions in courts? Will contracts be enforced? These are the conversations that naturally an investor that wants to invest in any economy has. So one of the things that we have structured the summit to do is through the different sessions to provide clear consensus from the business side on what we want to see in terms of clear forward guidance in all these areas. Because these are the things you put together and you show an investor, and the investor says, yes, Nigeria is ready for business. So for example, this morning we're going to have a special session on public assets, right? Nigeria's public assets historically have underperformed. We borrow money, we put it in an airport, in a rail, in a refinery, and then these assets cannot pay back, right? That cannot be our future, right? Our future has to be that our investments in our assets must first be able to pay, especially when you borrow the money, right? Must be able to pay the debts and then create wealth for future generations. So out of that, this session, for example, we expect that there will be some clear forward guidance on asset governance in Nigeria, all the Nigerian assets, how they are performing, a clear asset risks framework, a clear institutional coordination framework as to how do you manage Nigeria's assets as a whole, what is our asset strategy, including state-owned assets, assets that are concessioned, privatized, commercialized, or what are the guardrails for the selling of Nigerian assets to ensure that even when we do sell the assets, they are sold in the national interest and the proceeds serve the national interest and investment in future generations, right? A session like that will create clear forward guidance notes today, and that will then go to hopefully, with the government side, optimizing policy, regulation, and a new set of actions on how our assets will perform. If Nigerian assets perform at their optimal capacity by, square kilometer, we are one of the most blessed nations on earth. But if our assets don't perform, they keep operating suboptimal or operate almost as dead assets, then it doesn't matter. So I think that we've calibrated the summit to push business leaders, to push regulators, to push and challenge policymakers on what the consensus for forward guidance in all these areas are. And if an investor invests in certain types of projects, you can present all you want. An investor looks at an investment grade asset, asks questions, has it been de-risked of regulatory bottlenecks? Has it been de-risked of political bottlenecks? Has it been de-risked of security threats and issues? And when he asks all those questions, can I make money from this asset? Can I create value in the society whilst making some money? Those are the choices an investor makes. And so a big part of how we have designed this summit is to solve the question of the investors that will invest in Nigeria's industrialization, in infrastructure, in the critical areas. How do they get that forward guidance they need?
All right. So Kwajuloju, we know that, of course, it's going to be a very rich one. I mean, I've spoken to your chief economist a couple of times, even before now. And I'm glad that you earlier, you did mention the fact that you have timelines and targets, for your recommendations. So we want you to tell us, Nigerians, when you will be back this week at the end of your summit to share with us those recommendations and the timelines. We would like to have you back this week. When are you coming back? I know how difficult it is to get it. So that's why I want you to do it in public.
I think we can all reflect. So you have my commitment that we can reflect with Nigerians at the end of the week, for example, about how the summit went.
Thursday.
And then about a week.
Thursday.
Yeah. And in about a week, when all the notes are around, you and I can do a special session that now breaks it down. These are the agreed actions. These are the timelines, because as you know, we're going to send all this to Federal Executive Council and to the National Economic Council, and we will go ahead and present to them what Nigerians want across all these big areas and get their consensus or action also. So a lot of work ahead.
So do you want to do this week or you want to do next week?
Yes, you have my commitment on that.
That was a political answer, Dr. Adunoju. But I'll let you go. I'll get back to you off air. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your conference or your summit.
Thank you for having us, my sister. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, well, closely related to that, you've been hearing about the price of cooking gas. Oh, and we had the GCEO of NNPCL put it on the strike by Pengasson last week. That's why we've seen that hike in the price of cooking gas, and everybody's talking about it and praying that their gas will not be exhausted at this time, so they can still hang on for a bit. We've seen cooking gas price increase by 42.86%, according to Financial Derivatives Company, to 25,000 naira because of shortages and that hiccup that we had last week because of strike by Pengasson. I want to talk about this and a whole lot more with manager at Financial Derivatives Company, Dumebi Oluwole, joining us virtually today. Hi, Dumebi. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Ini.
Yeah, I don't know if you're like many people in the office this morning. We're praying, please let my gas last until the next 2 weeks, so I don't have to go looking for how to buy gas, cooking gas. But I mean, it's quite serious. More than 40% increase in the price of cooking gas.
Yes. I mean, first of all, I'm happy I actually bought mine some weeks ago, so I'm very happy about that. But on a more serious note, I would say that this is one of those situations where we've seen how disruptions to supply chains can significantly, impact the domestic markets and have significant implications on living standards. So we have seen the standoff between Pengasson and the Dangote refinery, of which now we know that Dangote is receiving gas supplies, butane supplies as well, to refine, to refine and then produce LPG and then distribute and supply. So the issues that we've seen with the industrial action has clearly had a negative impact on prices, and that's what we're currently seeing right now in the markets. There are expectations that with the truce that we've seen and mediation from the minister, we expect that prices will return to normal. But then again, in the global market, we're also seeing that LNG prices are rising. And so there is that concern as well, regarding how stable prices will be, especially as we head into the festive season. So I guess it's a situation of mixed feelings. But more importantly, it does spotlight the need for us to significantly focus on the consumers whenever we're making decisions, or whenever policies and decisions are made regarding industrial actions and changes that should be made. The concern on ensuring that supply chains are strengthened, are stable, and are consistent to ensure that market disruptions are not this significant is extremely important. So I think that's what I would say regarding the increase in LPG prices.
Yeah, well, obviously, and we hope that it's a permanent solution, even though, I heard the Pengasson boss say that if Dangote goes against some of the agreements, then they will just kick in the strike action without any warning. And I mean, look at how many days they went on strike for, and we're suffering the impact even after the strike has been called up. But maybe another interesting thing is what's going on in the oil space. OPEC Plus has increased their output. We're seeing price move one way or the other. Nigeria, on its part, is talking about how they are determined, to increase their own output, which of course is good for revenue. But, one thing that keeps coming to my mind is how can Nigeria increase its output above the quota which OPEC has given to Nigeria? Isn't there something to be sorted out there?
I mean, there is, considering the fact that we do have the capacity to. So I will say that there is a world where that happens, but beyond that, there are conversations to happen within the cartel, for that to actually happen. We've seen other countries within the cartel actually make moves to do such. Even the price leader within the cartel, I think Saudi Arabia did, make some moves around increasing its production almost above, its assigned quota. So clearly what that points to is a world where Nigeria can actually produce above its OPEC quota. Remember, the reason why these quotas exist is to ensure that prices do not significantly decline, and member countries within the cartel are able to still make, a profit, are still able to make significant gains at a reasonable price range within the oil market, right? But then again, you remember, OPEC countries are not the only oil producers, right? There are other countries that are producing oil, and the more we're seeing an increase, especially in Russian oil, the chances that oil prices will continue to decline or remain bearish is high. And now we've seen OPEC countries, ramp up production, but are unable to sell because of their quotas. And now that is changing with OPEC increasing its supply, and that's a trend that we think will likely continue in the near term, but of course, very cautiously and conservatively. So yes, I do think that there's a world where Nigeria can increase its oil production because we do have the capacity to. I mean, when you also consider the fact that at an average production so far in the year, about 1.4 million barrels per day, when you look at our latest numbers from the NUPRC, when you add condensates, you see that oil production at Nigeria's crude production really has actually risen to about 1.7 million barrels per day, edging very close to the budget benchmark of 2.06 million barrels per day. So to answer your question, there is that world with OPEC increasing its quota and the chances that they're going to keep increasing, though conservatively, there's that world that Nigeria can actually increase its production and Nigeria's OPEC quota might actually be revised upwards.
Okay, that's interesting, and well, we hope to see that, especially because already in the 2025 target, which is almost ending, we have 2.2 million barrels target. But thank you so much, Manager, Financial Derivatives Company, Dumebi Oluwole, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we've been talking about the speech, the 65th independence anniversary of Nigeria. But the drivers of all of this are the youths. What's happening to them? Where are their voices? We'll take a bit of that when we come back after this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. It's still Business Morning right here on Channels Television. Let's look at the youth now. And this is an important group of people, the future. In fact, the future starts today. So it's whatever we empower the youth with today that we can expect to see tomorrow, yes? So in Nigeria, we have over 65 million people who are under the age 10 to 24, the Gen Zs and the millennials. They combine to over just 50%. Unfortunately, the issue of unemployment also plagues this group. So we see in 2024, unemployment in this group, with this group of people, was about 5.05%, slightly lower than what it was in the previous year, still within that 5%. The NEET rate, that's youth who have completed education but are neither in employment nor education nor training, that stood at about 14.4%, capturing almost 22 million youths. Unemployment, according to the World Bank, is highest in Abia State, about 18.7%, and unemployment is lowest in Nasarawa State. I guess we should find out the reason with Dr. Dayo Israel. Dr. Dayo Israel is the National Youth Leader of APC and joins us. He's been interacting with the youth a whole lot, and so we'll share some of those reasons and perhaps possible solutions with us. Dr. Israel, good morning and welcome to the program. Sorry earlier, we did put you up when you were not supposed to. We apologize for that. But it's good to have you on the program, especially on this segment.
Good morning, Mr. John Ekwa. Thank you very much for having me on the show, and it's been fantastic so far. Thank you very much.
Great. So I know you are with the ruling party, so most likely we'll be getting a lot of praises. But I mean, so we don't ignore the youth, and yet we say the youth are the future of Nigeria. We're talking about reforms, how to move the economy forward, issue of insecurity. And we sometimes wonder, what are the youth's thoughts about the reforms? You interact a lot with them. Please share with us what they've been saying and their expectations.
Thank you very much for having me. And I think that it's important, the conversations ongoing in Abuja right now. For example, the Nigerian Economic Summit group going on. You had the executive director earlier, and also conversations around AFTA and leveraging the global market or the regional market. Recently at the Youth House, we recently set up the first structure, the first secretariat of a youth wing of any political party in Nigeria. It's called the Youth House in Wuse 2, which is the Youth House of the Recently, we hosted the MD of Nexim Bank. And what we had done with that event was to bring together the MD of Nexim and also young Nigerians in particular who were interested in export export, to collaborate and have conversations around how young entrepreneurs and young startups and young founders can leverage on the AFTA and also the regional market, and also can benefit and tap into the non-oil export. The reality is that if we're going to build a new economy, if we're going to build a very strong and viral economy, we've got to invest in startups, we've got to invest in young people, we've got to invest in young businesses. I was with the Minister of Trade and Industry yesterday, Mrs. Jumoke Oduwole, a fantastic woman. She was with us at the Youth House in Wuse 2 yesterday. And the conversations that we're having with her as young people, because part of what we do at the Youth House is to bridge the gap between policymakers and young people. So almost every week we bring in different policymakers to interact with young people. Tomorrow we have the Minister of Women Affairs. On Friday we have another senior government leaders. And what we spoke about with the Minister of Trade and Industry yesterday was the need for their ministry and the agencies under them to work collaboratively and aggressively to find a way to create an intervention, a major intervention that can boost SMEs and startups, that can boost. So, there are a lot of grants that we have, things like 500,000 naira, things like 2 million naira, things like 5 million. Some agencies in the federal government offer some of those loans. Lagos State, for example, has the LSCTF. But part of what we shared with the Minister of Trade and Industry yesterday was the need to create a kind of funding and grant that can support startup with nothing less than 10, 15, 20 million. And what are we talking about? We need to build businesses. We need to fund businesses with the kind of financing where you can rent a shop, you can equip your shop, you can furnish, you can buy generators and other machineries that you need, and also be able to pay your staff in about 6 months. Because if we're going to build lasting economy, which is what the vision of the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is, we have to ensure that we're putting enough resources and enough money into the hand of young startups. So what are the young people saying? A lot of the young people are interested in not just even looking for a job anymore. Our generation is not looking for employment largely. They're looking for opportunities to start their own business, to run their own industry. We want to be Dangote, we want to be Femi Otedola, we want to be Bua. We want to begin to also, create businesses that is going to last generation. And so the priorities for young people right now is in building capacity, in skills development. Recently, about 2 weeks ago, we just trained about 50, 80 thereabout young people at the Youth House on how to make perfumes, scented candles, and all of those kind of things. So that's what young people want to see, things that can get their hands busy. In a few days, we're going to start training young people as well. We have about 500 people who have registered for our catering vocational training program, where we're training them how to make small chops, how to make perfumes. And so there are those small scales, micro business ideas. And there are also big, ideas that young people are running, creating bottled water, manufacturing different products. For example, what North Motor is doing with Toby Ajayi, where they're assembling vehicles in Nigeria, and they're actually partnering right now with Unilag to create a campus-based assembling plant for young people. So what I see is that in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll begin to see major disruptions in the manufacturing industry, not just in the tech industry, but also in the manufacturing industry and in many other industries by young people, the young generation, the Gen Zs. People are beginning to create businesses even as young as 22, 23. Yeah. Many of our young people have online businesses at 21.
True,
when we as a party are also working with our government, it is to ensure that we can invest more in these young people to now have the capital they need to turn those ideas into reality.
Yeah, Dr. Israel, and I do agree with you. I mean, I was at a meeting like 2 Saturdays ago where you had, about 100 core members. And
I think I lost.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. I said I was in a meeting about 2 weeks ago where I had about 100 core members, and I asked, how many people want to do a 9 to 5? And you could barely see anybody raise their hands. So, I mean, I agree with you that young people have great ideas now, and they are not really ready, to get into the job. But perhaps we will need to find a balance, because even when people create jobs and manufacturing companies, they do need people to work on those jobs. So we need to find a balance. I'm saying that so that in your talking to them and all of that, please to help us find a balance, because you still need employees, for those companies, whether it's mini or maxi companies. The other thing is there are so many opportunities, as you've noted, both from the federal and state government, but unfortunately, the information doesn't seem to stream down, you know, to a whole lot of people. And how do we get it beyond, you are for APC, beyond the APC to just any youth at all? And it doesn't have to be political party affiliated.
Thank you very much. So, two things. Let me first respond to the first point of your question, which is that not everybody... So, the reality is that the younger generation do not see the marketplace like our fathers did. So, our fathers wanted to work in a company for 45 years or 35 years and retire, get a gold wristwatch and rock on a chair. I was reading an article this morning about how septuagenarians and octogenarians are also trying to now start a business and compete with the younger generation. So the reality is that a lot of our young people have the capacity to monitor. So many of them still wants to work in the private sector, but at the same time, work in normal employment, at the same time have what we call in this new generation the side hustle, where they're also able to create something, build something. I have a staff, for example, at the Youth House. She works with us, one of our program managers, dedicated and work with us from 9 to 5. But I'm also aware that on her status every day, she's advertising the honey that she makes, the crayfish and all of the other things that she makes and she sells to complement whatever she earns from a 9 to 5 job. So many of our young people are not just looking at employment, which they are also embracing as a 9 to 5, but also complementing that employment with skills, you know, with ideas, with innovations, and with enterprise that, you know, they believe that is their passion. So two can work together. You know, everybody has a professional job, most of our young people now, but they also have a side also. So that's number one. Number two is, and you know that we also live in a world of remote work now. There are people who are in Nigeria who are working for companies in America, companies in China, in India, in Pakistan, and they're on their computer and they're delivering value for their job. Now let's go to what government is doing. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration has prioritize young people. We can see that in what is done, even in the appointment of young people into his cabinet. Many young people who are heads of agencies and and ministries and ministers and all of that. We see many young people who are SSAs to the president who are leading transformational agenda for the administration. So the president is also concerned about how to finance young people. Look at what is done, for example, with the student loan. With the student loan, we're now paying school fees and giving stipends to students in universities. Every public university in Nigeria now have access to that student loan. They don't have to worry about, you know, their school fees and how to take care of themselves while getting to education. So the president is concerned about, you know, putting resources into the hand of young people. There's also a lot that is going on in agencies such as SMIDAN, Bank of Industry and all of that. Of course, there's a need to intensify, and that's what we, for example, as a party of the administration, are also complementing what the government is doing, which is what is behind our An Evening Wheat event and our breakfast meeting event, which is also streamed live sometimes on national television and other platforms, and also, you know, intensive working with all the agencies to amplify what they're doing so that the common man at the grassroots can see what government is doing. And the main reason behind our evening interactions that we have with policymakers is for them to come and give account about what their ministry is doing, what they're doing in terms of youth development, what opportunities are in their agencies that young people can take advantage of and can benefit from. Because no man likes a candle and puts it on a table. So what we want to do as a youth wing of the ruling party, because after all is said and done, the party midwifed the administration. When Nigerians went to the polling booth, it was APC that they voted for. And when we're going back in 2027 to re-elect the president by the grace of the Almighty, it is the APC logo that's going to be on the ballot box. So we feel that it's also important to complement what the government is doing and to work strongly, not partisanly. Our goal is not just for APC members. Our work is for all the Nigerian youth. As a matter of fact, I usually say that the APC constitution says that the national youth leader and other leaders in the party shall be responsible for introducing programs that would endear the party to Nigerian youth, not to APC youth only, to Nigerian youth. So the question of the party is very clear. So even as a party, we are working to ensure that the larger population of Nigerians are able to benefit from what the government is doing, and we're engaging the policymakers and the ministers, many of them who have been coming to the Youth House, to come and showcase what they're doing, share what they're doing. Our digital media team are now leveraging that to communicate to Nigeria. There are lots of other things that the government is doing in terms of funding startups and also supporting and creating an enabling environment, also protecting and policies around intellectual property that is being advanced by the Ministry of Tourism and Arts and Culture. So there's a lot that the government is doing, and we also need to be able to keep ahead as Nigerians, as citizens, and not give an excuse that we don't know what is happening, because there's a lot that is happening.
All right, a lot is happening, and we have to be involved as Nigerians. Thank you so much, Dr. Dayo Israel, National Youth Leader at the APC.
Thank you so much.
All right, it's time for Global News. Yeah, Laddie Williams, Laddie, we caught you even before you came in. I have to let you know. But Laddie has a global
I was just hiding in the corner.
Yeah, but we caught you in your hiding space.
Yeah.
But Laddie, you know, I can't believe that the U.S. government is still shut down. It's about 5 days now or something?
Yeah, so it's the second week of government shutdown in the U.S. You know, quite interesting. I did do some research in Nigeria. We've never had that before.
Oh, no, we're bigger than shut down.
It doesn't
we deal with our issues.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's there's still a deadlock right now. But let's get an update on that. We see the U.S. government shutdown. That continues at this point. You see the Republican and Democratic funding bills. They failed to pass in the Senate just yesterday. The GOP measure falling short in a 52-42 vote, and the Democratic proposal, that was rejected at 45-55. They need about 60 votes. If you can put that up for me. Lawmakers are set to resume negotiations and prepare for further votes, in the coming days. So that's what we're expecting next. That's coming, since there's still a deadlock right there in the U.S. So it's still shut down at this point. We'll give you more updates if we get them. Yeah, that's the latest status there. The shutdown continues. The failed negotiations there, and the voting 52-42, that's for the Republican bill there. So what happens next? Continued negotiations and further votes. That's what's expected. Also, is now, we see the World Bank has cautioned that rising U.S. tariffs on Indian export could weigh heavily on South Asia's growth prospects next year, warning that trade tensions and weaker global demand pose new risk to the region's economic outlook. In its latest regional update, the bank noted that while South Asia remains one of the world's fastest growing regions in 2025, tighter trade conditions, high borrowing costs, and lingering inflation could slow momentum in 2026. India, this region's largest economy, is expected to feel the impact most acutely as export dependent sectors face potential headwinds from Washington's tariff measures there. Then in Australia, they say the consumer sentiment that tumbled in October to a 6-month low as growing fears over inflation, economic uncertainty rattled households, according to a survey by Westpac. The Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Sentiment Index slid 3.5% to 92.1 from 95.4 points in September, marking its steepest monthly fall since April 2025, and firmly placing the index below the 100 optimism threshold right there in Australia. Then Constellation Brands, they delivered a mixed earnings report, beating analyst expectations and earnings per share about 15 cents, but missing the mark on revenue. The company posted quarterly earnings per share of $3.63, outpacing the anticipated $3.48, while revenue came in at $2.48 billion, falling short of the 2.51 billion consensus expected. All right, let's get a check on what's happening in the UK now. Our London Bureau Chief, Juliana Olayinka, joins us. Great to have you, Juliana. Good morning. So definitely political issues in major economies at this point, also in the UK. Talk to me about the potential economic and business consequences of the UK Conservatives' controversial immigration plan, particularly for labor shortages, investment confidence, and the country's long-term growth.
Good morning, Laddie. I hope you're well. We are banging the party conference season in the UK, which is a period of 3 weeks during September and October of each year, where the House of Commons is in recess, and basically the big political parties get together to spell out their ideas among members. And this week it has been the turn of the Conservative Party, which is being led by, of course, pretty controversial Kemi Badenoch, who is doing abysmally in the polls. In fact, I think there was a poll out earlier today which showed that more than half of Conservative Party members want her out. So she's not just unpopular in Nigeria. Kemi Badenoch is also unpopular within her own party. And she's under a lot of pressure, as you can imagine. Lots of headlines coming out of the UK at the moment, which is an anti-immigration stance. The Reform Party, which is led by Brexiteer Nigel Farage, has been doing incredibly well in the polls. In fact, I think there was a poll last week that even suggested if there was a general election in the UK tomorrow, Nigel Farage would be Prime Minister. And so Kemi Badenoch has tried to win back some of that far-right support by spelling out a 7-point plan of immigration, quite long and lengthy and boring. But I think the main part of that, which has put some people up in arms, is that she wants a Trump-style deportation plan. I think, a lot of us have been seeing those ICE detentions, which are quite frightening, where they're going to clubs, they're going to schools, and they're basically kidnapping people from the road and deporting them to Mexico. Kemi Badenoch is suggesting something quite similar, although that is very unlikely to happen because I don't think she has more than a couple of weeks left as leader of the Conservative Party. But that's what's happening now. As I said, the House of Commons is in recess, so it's pretty quiet here in the UK, apart from some of those old big names of the past like Priti Patel and others who'll be speaking at the Conservative Party conference this afternoon, Laddie.
Right, well, I guess we'll keep tracking that. But to the housing market now in the UK, we're seeing data showing prices have posted the first decline since May. That's according to Halifax. Help us unpack this data.
Yeah, that's right. Halifax says UK house prices slipped by 0.3% in September. As you were saying, that's the first monthly fall in quite a while. It's still very, very pricey to live here in the UK. Homes cost just under £300,000. Now, I think the fall may not seem dramatic, but of course, I think since COVID, we've been looking at these house prices quite forensically, and any small tweak does matter. I think sellers now are realizing that buyers are stepping back. I think a lot of people are waiting for Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer's budget next month to see if there are going to be any goodies for first-time buyers, which of course boosts the housing market. I think the bigger picture is that it's holding steady, but it's softening.
Fantastic. Well, I guess we'll keep tracking those markets, but I guess that's good news at this point. Thank you so much, Juliana, for the details.
Thanks, Laddie.
And that's it for the Global News segment.
All right, Laddie, thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah. All right, so that's it on the program today. But not before I just let you know what's going on in the market, the stock market here in Nigeria. We seem to have lost the green color that we had, some of those profits, 780 billion that was gained yesterday. We seem to have lost some of that in early trade. The market is in the red at this time, 0.21%, but we're still on 144,000 level. We've lost about 400, right there after the 144,000. But at intraday, Laddie Williams will be here to give you fresher numbers at that time. Hopefully at intraday, we would have regained the green color and maybe made some gains in the market. I'm Ini John Meko, and that's it on Business Morning today. Thank you so much for being a part of it.